I think the best place to start is probably the Liverpool victory against Brentford on the weekend. So if you looked at the victory and how it came about with, 2 goals in second half stoppage time, you might think Liverpool struggled in the game. Liverpool maybe didn't perform to their best. But I mean, if you just look at the stats and if you look at what happened in the match, I'd say that Liverpool were it was probably one of their most dominant displays of the season. I mean, I saw something saying that they had 37 shots, which is, their joint most in a Premier League game on record, equaling their game against Everton in 2016. And, I don't know about you, but it kind of reminded me of Liverpool's game against Aston Villa in the title-winning season. That same relentlessness to, win late on. And, would you say that if Liverpool, put in a similar level of performance against Ipswich on the weekend, maybe, the goals will come slightly earlier and no one will be questioning, whether Liverpool are still performing to their best?
Yeah, it's a strange one, really, because during the game, and obviously Liverpool's so dominant, taking so many shots, and the way that they completely controlled Brentford's threat for the majority of the game as well, it's so impressive. And yet, it gets to the 90th minute, you're thinking, I'm going to have to write about this or talk about this and try and accentuate the positives. And yet people are going to see 3 draws on the bounce and kind of worry, is this a little bit of a wobble for Liverpool? Is it kind of falling apart a little bit? But, I'm a big kind of believer in the underlying numbers and the fact that they do tell us something. I think, Arne Slot made this point after the game, is that you look at the XG from the games that Liverpool have drawn recently, and it would have been the same at Brentford even if they'd drawn that. Look at how dominant Liverpool are. Look at how good they are at generating good quality shots and giving up very few good quality shots as well, generally speaking. It's clearly a really good football team. But of course, it makes it so much easier to focus on these aspects and drag out these positives when you do get a win. And you just can't shy away from the fact that as much as those numbers would have been a comfort, and you still would have had Liverpool as massive favourites to win the league, it was just hugely significant that they found a way to get over the line in this one, because, the comparison to the Villa game in 2019 is sort of, I think that's really apt, because, that game, it meant that Liverpool were 5 points clear of Man City going into the sides meeting at Anfield. It allowed them to make that gap into 8 eventually. And for me, that was that couple of weeks was where the title was won that season, really. City didn't really feel that they could catch Liverpool from that point onwards. And so in this case here, if you drop points in this, it gives Arsenal such a boost going into the Aston Villa game that they had. If they close the gap, then again, do they get that belief? Liverpool lose a bit of belief. Whereas the complete opposite happened in the end, is that Liverpool scored 2 goals late on. Arsenal fans are gutted. That atmosphere transmits into the stadium. As soon as Villa pull back a goal, the doubts creep in. And then, of course, Villa get a point, and that gap is back to 6 points with Liverpool having a game in hand. So just mentally, sometimes you do have to disregard the underlying numbers and statistics and say, the mental impact those kind of moments can have on a season. I do think that will prove to be hugely significant, really. It felt like one of those weekends you'll look back at and say, that's where Liverpool won the title.
Yeah. I mean, that game was really nervy, because obviously, like you said, it gets into the 90th minute and you think, oh, not another draw. And then maybe those doubts start to creep in about the title. But hopefully on the weekend when Liverpool play Ipswich, they just lost 6-0 to Man City. Hopefully that will be, I don't want to say more straightforward, but hopefully if Liverpool perform to the level they did on Saturday, hopefully then, people won't have to discuss, are Liverpool going to drop points again, and just another win on the board.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Arne Slot will want a bit more of a straightforward game, maybe one where the couple of goals maybe came in the first half, and you can kind of see it out from there. And I think home games are just generally more straightforward as well. That will be helpful. Obviously, Forest and Brentford back to back is pretty tricky, really. 2 sides who you think you're going to dominate them in terms of possession, and that's the expectation going into the game. But they want you to do that a lot of the time because they're so threatening on the counter. They can thread 3 passes together, and we know how good Forest are on the counter, but Brentford are excellent as well with Mbuemo and Wissa up top in terms of their link up. So those are, and then you add the crowd into that, and it makes you feel like every time you give up a counter, you lose a bit of belief in yourself. So those are the kind of mental tests that are attached to it. Whereas Anfield, against a side who are struggling this season, a side, as you say, who've conceded 6 in the last game, it's just a nicer environment to play in. And as you say, it's a real good opportunity for Liverpool to go into that game and kind of back up what they did at Brentford and say, okay, we had a little blip. It was a couple of draws back to back, but now we're out of it. We're ready to kind of kick on and go and really seize this league title. So yeah, it's a kind fixture on paper, and I'm sure Liverpool want to prove that.